Hey guys, I decided to sneak into a convention for the intro of this video. This year for Worlds, I would unironically say, is quite possibly like the best premium that Worlds has ever seen. I don't think there is a better time to play premium than this Worlds format. These like WCCs, your Kingslayers, and they're playing like Pale Moon at Worlds, or like Nova Grappler, or like Gurgwit. This is Worlds. Like, remember last year? Remember when everybody was on like Maidens and Highlander and Narukami, all of these like heavy meta decks? People are just safely going in with like their locals, tried and true pet decks, and they are actually doing well. I don't think the game has ever seen an environment that was quite like that, and I think that's a really good thing. I do know that there are two very toxic things going around in Premium. Namely Neo Nectar and anything Keter Sanctuary, because of that stupid Reverence Rush Dragon. Be it your mill decks, your stall decks, or your turn 4 OTK, random wombo combo, funny cheese, popo decks. Pick your battle. I decided to pick Victor. Why? I'm insane. Going into this event, I had two options. I had Highlander and I had Victor. And every time I played a game of Highlander, I would say 1 in every 5 games, I would twice in a row, 2 times in a game, go reveal top 10 for Reindeer, and I would see just absolutely nothing, just a bunch of blanks. And I would put a lot of good targets in there. I wasn't playing many, and then I put more in, and then I'm just like, wow, I'm just not seeing them, and there will be games where you just don't see them, and you need to. And this deck doesn't do anything anymore because we don't have them. And I really would, like, I could be playing Victor right now. You ask Peter what he named his deck this year? He named it I Could Be Playing Victor right now. And I convinced people that I was going to be on Highlander. And then the morning of, you had TIE Fighter going crazy like, dude, we got to get Victor on stream. Because he was one of the 2 people that knew that I was actually playing the deck. And what happens? The one other Victor player in the room gets on stream. And he fumbles the bag tremendously. Congrats to you and shout out to you, by the way. You did good. You have 4th place. Good job. This is quite possibly the best positioned the deck has ever been going into Worlds. I really hope you guys hear me through all of these people. There are a lot of people here. I did not expect to come here today. This is probably going to be the most in-depth deck profile you will ever see. Not just in Vanguard, but like any game. Like Solemn uploaded like a fucking like 2-hour, something 40-something minute whatever video on Tier Limit. This is going to eclipse that. This is going to be like a multi-layered video that has branches. You know, like that Markiplier thing where you had like that video and it's like, oh, you have 2 routes. You go like one route, you go, you click one thing and it goes to another like alternate ending. It's going to be like that. This deck profile is going to have alternate endings. This deck profile is going to have branching timelines, just like your favorite Marvel movie. This deck comes with a built-in vibrator that just does everything you ever want it to and more. Final thing I'd like to note about Victor before I start the video is that in order to not just play this deck, but beat this deck, you have to be on top of your game at a level that not a lot of people are actually prepared for, including most people at Worlds. You will see a lot of people not know the Victor matchup, and it just cost them the entire round. This is a deck that you sometimes want to damage deny, but sometimes don't, and it entirely depends on each card they ride, draw, and drive check. This is a deck that's win con will change every single game, and you have to be on point every single time just to know what they're going into next. And realistically, the only real thing that beats a Victor player is a good player. And anything less than that, you just cook. And that's why I decided to take this deck. This deck loses to good players with decks that are better than us. And I'm perfectly fine with that, because that means that once I'm playing those people, I have an even matchup. You have so much variance in Victor that it evens out entirely. And that actually gives us the best Vanguard games you could possibly get. Everything is on the line, and that's exactly what I wanted. So I decided to take the one deck that I think could not only get me there, but I have been playing and know back to front for 10 years. The fact that I've been playing this deck that long is painful. But yeah, anyways, enjoy the video. You have no idea how relieved I am to finally make this video. I've been sitting on this for like 6 months or more, and this deck has been like in the process of being labbed for even longer than that. You guys might remember the other video I uploaded when this deck was in its very like infinitesimal stage of being tested. That was very blind into a format that was very hypothetical, and as the format played out, and as I realized that basically post-history collection, the game is essentially the same as it was before, it gave me a lot of insight on how to build this deck now, how to change certain cards going forward. Every single card in this deck, including the starter, has at least 3 reasons why it's in here. You will not see this amount of in-depth description probably anywhere else in any other YouTube profile or any like Vanguard related thing. I've been playing this deck for over 10 years now. This variant of the deck or archetype for at least 7. I am the person to go to for this. If you guys want any advice or whatever, leave a comment, pop into the Discord. There's a lot of people that have always been like wanting to figure out how to play this deck or like how to personalize their own Nova deck, and I've always been there to help them, so let me know. I'm glad to help. I also have a Metafy if you care to send me money. I definitely need it. So yeah, this deck, like, you guys know the stigma, right? Nova Grappler, like, every time anyone ever comments anything about Nova Grappler, the word cope is in the same sentence, somewhere in there, right? But like, this is the 1 month, this is the 1 season where we're not coping. Going into the deck, and yes, the starter does matter, so in testing, I was playing the Blau SP starter and Rumble. The starters all have the same effect, but their name is different, and that's all that matters. So you have 3 options, and what you expect to play around and see in the room entirely determines what starter you choose. So the reason you would play Rumble is, Extreme Battle or Rumble, is one of 2 reasons. The first is Gear Chronicle if they are playing Steam Maidens and the card that optionally lets you put back a card, which gives you another Extreme Battler in your deck with 10k shield. I was expecting a bit of Gear Chronicle. I know CrestJet is a popular deck, and I also know, of course, the world champion from last year, Dave Vecht, was definitely playing Gear Chronicle. But the thing is, that card isn't entirely favored right now, and any other card that would be putting that card back into my deck just isn't really worth it. The other reason is a very, like, few and far between reason, but if you are in a format with a lot of deck out and you need to tech a Legion card and you need to recycle 4 cards and you just don't have anything besides the starter, that would be the other reason you would play it. But again, those 2 scenarios are just too inconsistent to ever rely on that card. And then the other one is the Blau. The Blau is if you are expecting your opponent to damage deny you, which is something that's pretty good, but at the same time, there are a lot of decks that you really just need to ask them what they're going to do when you show your Scarlet Bird, namely bugs. So the reason I put White Tiger in at the last second, what we do against bugs is there are 3 bug decks that I would say are in the testing pool for Worlds. The first is Flag Bugs, which we beat. The second is Darkface Bugs. If you know Peter Van Allen's Darkface list, it's a similar list to that. Some of the cards could change, but ultimately we have a favorable matchup into them unless they play a very specific engine that deck doesn't play. And the third one is Shield Fisher. And again, that is a much harder matchup for us, but it becomes significantly harder if they play the Cradle engine. Same thing with Darkface. So the Cradle engine actually kind of cooks us if they know what they're doing. And the way that Cradle beats us is by damage denying us and trying to deck us out. If they can just resource starve us, leave us at 0, and then ultimately just like kill us from however little damage, because again, they have so much defense that we just can't really do anything, and they're just trading equally with our rear guards. And the only thing that actually gives them that edge against us is the Cradle engine. So why we play this is that Scarlet Bird is a card that stands your field if you have White Tiger and Soul. We do not play Scarlet Bird, but the threat of Scarlet Bird existing will make bugged players think that they're on a clock against us, even if they know the matchup. If they're testing thoroughly, the threat of Scarlet Bird being in my deck makes, I would say, 4 out of 6 bug players immediately think they need to step on the gas against us and call out rearguard, swing at us, and pretty much just give us damage to work for the rest of the game. And that's all we need. The threat of Scarlet Bird being there and just giving us the tempo swing against them is, again, it actually did come up in Swiss. I faced a Mega Colony player that was waiting for me to drop the Scarlet Bird every single turn, and I just didn't. And this card actually paid off by switching the starter, and again, it might not come up for you. Ultimately, if you don't really care about things that technical, you don't have to play the White Tiger or the Rumble or the Blau starter. You can just play whatever you want. I know Nova Grappler has like 10 different starters, so just pick whatever you want. But again, if you really care about that very niche interaction and that slight mind game with the Bugs players, White Tiger's the way to go. This is something you would see similar in Stephen Lee's list. We talked about this a bit, and we've come to similar conclusions, but the reasoning behind a lot of the cards in my deck are a lot different from his. And I actually think a lot of the reasons and the cards in his list are kind of like built into like a narrow play style, to where if your deck doesn't really get its one thing going, it can't really do other things well. So I'm playing the 1 G Victor and the 3 V Victor. You'll see this in his list as well, as you probably have already. So the reason we do this is very simple. I actually think this is something that a lot of Excel decks should be picking up on, which is that anything with a remote amount of search going first should be realizing that you only ever really need one of this. If you go first and you ride this, and you get your gift markers, and you go off, then cool, you get a really aggressive turn. But if you go second and you ride these guys, and you're playing like 4 of this guy, or even 2 of this guy, and you ride this guy, and you're striding something, even if you're striding your history collection stride, you have a glass cannon turn, none of the cards replace themselves. Oh yeah, you get a couple attacks, but it's way worse than what it could be. Or, if you stride anything else plus this card, again, it's a glass cannon turn because you could be riding one of these that insulates your board, that replaces itself twice, and also accelerates gift markers without having to go into a specific stride. This isn't a going second ratio set, but I will say that if you are planning on like going forward with Victor, this is where you start, and then depending on what you see in the format, we'll let you change accordingly. So the upcoming format, I'm seeing a lot of Nubatama being tested, and there's actually a very solid reason for you to cut one of these and play another G Victor. I'm still most likely going to be playing the 3V Victor. That's a tough matchup in general, but there are other things we can do in our deck to kind of commodify that. Ultimately, if we're going second, and we have the wider amount of card pool, we want to not only be seeing this, but every single turn of the game, we want to be riding a different Victor. And we'll see that in the other card ratios that I show you later. But the 3V Victor is really important because every single turn, we want to be just riding a new grade 3. Which is something that not a lot of other Victor lists are doing. They're usually riding the 1V Victor sitting there and then just kind of playing the game. But you don't realize that other than this card, every other Victor you ride is not only replacing itself, but replacing itself twofold, which leads into the other grade 3 we're playing, which is 2 Zubat Victor. This goes down to 1 next format once we become more of a glass cannon deck. This card underperforms in Worlds environment, but it actually overperforms in the BCS environment, where there's a lot more Link Joker, a lot more Narukami. This card came back into the deck as a countermeasure for tempo/control decks that are there to out-resource us. As soon as this card hits our field, it just tells your opponent that you can no longer out-resource us because we're going to get all of our resources back every single turn, and also just increase the ceiling of our combo turns and our setup turns to where we can just randomly either high roll or just draw like 7 cards in a turn. Basically, in Worlds, this card comes up into Neo Nectar sometimes, and then into Link Joker if we happen to see it. A lot of people said that it was the play this format. I don't think it was, but I did see a bit of Link Joker in the room. You can beat Link Joker without this, but there are just, again, a lot of scenarios where you would rather have this than this. So you also just have ways of getting to grade 3s, and again, you do not want to be playing 4 grade 3 Victors. That's a terrible idea. And even 5 sometimes is not enough. Especially with the philosophy of this deck being that we want to be riding a new Victor every turn. So like ideally going first, I'll tell you exactly what we want to be doing going first. Going first, we want to ride either this or this, and then the following turn, depending on how much damage our opponent's at and how hard we want to go, if we're going to set up, we ride this, and if we just go for game or set up, this is just in general in a vacuum, the better ride. So usually go first. In an ideal world, we're riding G Extreme, and then turn 4 we ride V Extreme. Going second, what we do, if we are facing a tempo or control oriented deck, our turn 3 ride is Zubat, and then our turn 4 ride is the V Victor. If we're facing a deck that is either trying to out-aggro us that we have to outspeed, or a deck that we need to beat on a clock before it just goes crazy, we need to ride 2 of these. That's pretty much the organization of when we want to be riding these Victors. If you know your ratios and the cards that search them and the bridges you have to each card, this is pretty much perfect. This is the best card in the deck and the worst card in the deck. So Sazanda is a card that a lot of people are cutting, and it's kind of my fault because last format, Victor was in a place where every card had to stand each other because everything had to be a starter. Whereas now, our deck actually has like an engine that's getting out pieces, so we don't need everything to be a starter because we inherently have starters. And this is just one of the cards that gets us out not just more starters, but like any amount of pieces. The way we use this is very different depending on the matchup. There are matchups where we're trying to win in the mid game that when we're checking our top 5 and we see a grade 1, we see like a Gunsdon and we see an Arashid, and we need the Arashid for turn 3 because it's a really good booster or a beat stick, we're going to grab the Gunsdon because it's a 5k shield and we want to keep the 10k shield in deck. There are very specific niche things that we need to keep in mind for those matchups just so we have like the right amount of shield in our deck, because spoiler warning, this deck has horrible 5k shield syndrome. The amount of 10k shields in this deck is like half of normal decks because all of our good cards were printed 7 years ago, and we're just living with those. So yeah, this card is mandatory at 4. People have asked why not go to 3, and it is just incorrect to go to 3. You need to ride 1 and see minimum 1 on Excel if you're trying to go full combo. If you're just trying to aggro and you're not trying to full combo, you don't need this. You only need 1 of them. Like if you're trying to just win on Merciless, you don't need to ride 1 and call 1, you just need to do 1 of the 2. Because riding 1 will get you an extender to get you a Merciless swing, or calling 1 will get you buffs on Merciless so that you can keep going with more pressure. But if we're trying to go wide against decks that we need to go wide against, like Granblue, or like literally anything that we need a board buff as early as possible, we do need to see 2 of them. So one of these is getting Road, and then again, when we're riding Victor, not only are we more likely to see these, but we're also more likely to, if we already have one of these, get our cards that let us go plus 2.5. This card is just too good not to play, and we have to play it at 4, again, just for those reasons. Torgal Sachi, this card has been like... This card has been on the fence for me for the longest time, whether or not I want to play 4 or 3. This card never went less than 3 copies, just because of how versatile it is. But again, it's like our best and worst Extreme Battler, because people that know how to play around us will deny us damage, so that we can't use this card. But at the same time, that's not the end of the world, because when they're denying us damage, that's kind of what we want, because if they're leaving us at a very low damage threshold, it's essentially like they're playing normally into any other deck, and then when they're putting us from 0 to 4, it's like the same thing as putting any other deck with better shield from 2 to 4, because our shield is so bad that if they're trying to play around us and they're just putting us at the same damage at the end of turn 4 that they're putting any other deck at, it's pretty much the same thing, and we didn't even need that extra shield in the first place, so we can get away with playing those low shield cards from 2017. The resist matters sometimes, again, Link Joker, big deal. Into bugs, putting this card on an Excel is very good. Into Cradle decks, they have no answer to this if they put it on, if you put it on an Excel. If you put anything else on an Excel and they Cradle it, you're kind of screwed because you have no way of getting it off the field. Whereas if you put this on a Cradle, and they have already started pushing you in, like they would if they see the Tiger and they're trying to like aggro you, for example, they're going to start swinging at this, and that's good for you because this is basically just a 5k shield guarding like a 30k attack. Or like, they're just going to have to get rid of it somehow. If not, you have free real estate on your Excel circles that they just have to attack into. The restand comes up. There will be games where you have to use this turn 3 to give yourself a drive check because you just need to put your foot on the gas. You don't want to do that all the time, but it's there just in case. The 7k comes up, but far less than you would think. Again, it's just like an extra buff if you're trying to go for your full combo favorite champ turn, if you really need it. This card kind of saved the entire clan. Spiral Breaker is like one of the best cards in this deck. This card just did so much as soon as it got printed. Yes, it ride fixes, and that's a big deal. Yes, it gets us to Sazanda reliably, which is a big deal because Sazanda is one of our only ways since 2016 that this deck has ever been able to go +1. But what this card does that people overlook is that this plus anything in a Buster turn is a 1-card 5-drive check. So if we are on Zubat and we have this plus Jarahawk behind it, and we give Zubat skill to Vanguard, and we have a crit or any amount of cards that go to Soul, and we have Jarahawk and we have this, we swing with it boosted, we activate its skill, we stand Jarahawk. If they're on grade 3, we stand the column. So it stands itself, Bustered procs, we get 2 drive checks, we swing again, with the Jarahawk boosted, end of battle Jarahawk, put it to Soul, draw stand, get another drive check, we're at 6, and then swing with it again, swing with Vanguard, Zubat skill stand, we're at 7 drive checks already, and we only had to commit 2 cards that both replace themselves +2. The best possible thing we can be doing in this deck is committing as little as possible early, and then replacing those cards so we can still combo late, which our deck is like historically horrible at doing. And this is one of the few cards that's able to do this. And the other card, spoiler alert, Steven was not even playing. There are a lot of, I'll get to it in a second, but I think it's mandatory, at least in Worlds. But this and that card, like, they look bad on paper, but you have to play them, just again, because it's a minimum amount of commitment, and they not only refund us, but they give us aggression for, like, as little resource management as possible. And we can just, like, go ham with them with only committing 1 card to the field, because, like, let's say, like, Narukami, right? They're calling, like, 4 or 5 cards from their hand, and they're drawing those cards back. Whereas if we did that, and we called those 4 or 5 cards back, unless we're getting drive checks, we're never getting those cards back. This deck just does not have card advantage. So the fact that this can combo into our stride and give us extra drive checks while calling 2 and replacing them with 2 and going neutral is just, like, insane for us. We'll take anything we can get, and, like, this card just exceeds what we needed. I played 3 V Arashid and 1 G Arashid. I don't remember if other people were on this ratio. I think most people were actually going 2G, 2V. I think 3V is a little bit better, just because this card is important, and, like, G Victor is important. But the matchups where we need G Victor, we only need G Victor. Everything else is kind of fluff. Like, we need a combo piece. Okay, we're gonna get a combo piece because our whole deck is combo pieces. Ultimately, all we need is G Victor plus a combo piece, and we're aggroing as crazy as possible turn 3. This is essentially just here to search this or Zubat into matchups where we need Zubat. This is much more important because this card is nice, but it has to be called to rear guard. We don't always want to be calling our Arashids to rear guard. And also, like, if we're calling this to rear guard, and then we're, of course, discarding the card, and we're getting out the Victor, we're kind of going -1 to fix our ride, and that kind of makes the ride that we search a little weaker, as opposed to this, that can be placed on Vanguard Circle for no cost, because we're just going to be placing a card on Vanguard Circle anyways, because the game is progressing. Yes, we're not guaranteed to see any given card. Again, we have 9 searchable targets in our deck, and also we're just going to be digging like crazy for them. This card getting into a Victor means that we don't have to call a rear guard out. So instead of going minus just to get the right card to essentially replace itself and going -1 to just play the game, this card, like, yes, it doesn't get us the guaranteed Victor, but the fact that it is as little commitment as possible is a big deal, and the fact that it's one of the few extreme battlers with 10k shield printed on it is another big deal. Another thing that this card comes up in is matchups that we're trying to, like, really aggro. This is an amazing booster behind your Victor Vanguard or behind your restand target, because it's a 15k booster when we restand something. So it's just a lot of pressure. All of your columns hit over defensive triggers, which is a really big deal that a lot of people that play 2 and 2 kind of, like, overlook. So these cards can go between 2-3 and 3-2. So going into BCS season, I was on 3 Gunsdawn and 2 Jarahawk. But going into Worlds, I went to 2 Jarahawk and 3 Gunsdawn. So the reasons behind this are, first off, there are less disruptive decks that are, like, threats to us. The ones that exist, we already kind of have answers to, and if we really need this, we can get to it, and we don't need 2. Narukami went from a coin flip matchup to we just win it. So we don't actually care about Narukami for this. Like, oh yeah, no, we need it to win, like, on our big turn, like, half the time, but, like, we don't actually need 2 anymore. We can get away with 1. Granblue, we only really need 1 of this if they're even set up. A lot of the time, we can just kill him before that. 3 of this just increases our drive check ceiling on our Buster turn. This card lets our victors be a plus 2.5, and why I say plus 2.5 is when we're riding V Victor, and we're going top 7 to call this. That is a technical plus 1. And then we boost with it, it goes to Soul, it leaves, and then we draw a card. So it's still 1, and then it stands. The card we take out of our opponent, yes, it's only a 15. Oh no, maybe it hits, maybe not. Maybe they spend a 5k to guard it. That's like a 0.5 if you even want to consider that. But we draw the card, and then we get the drive check. So bare minimum, it's plus 2. If we account for the card that our opponent either takes or guards with, it's a plus 2.5 is like how I'd like to see it. There's no reason to ever cut this card less than 2 copies. This card not only just feels good, but like if you take this card out, the deck just like becomes so much more of a glass cannon. Your routes to your win cons and your stabilizing plays just become worse. Don't think of this card as an extender. Think of this card as an advantage engine, as odd as that sounds, because it's a restander. Like, yes, it draws a card, but essentially what we're doing with this card is similar to what, like not our Pot of Greed, but like, you can kind of think of it like that. Also, the Soul matters a lot too. If we are going neutral with Bustard, it lets us map our Soul out much easier so that we can get more drive checks. Every single one of these we draw is guaranteed a 1 drive higher ceiling on Bustard. If we see 2 of this, we're averaging an 8 to 9 drive check turn, given we see any other card that goes to Soul, which we play a lot of. If we see 1 of this, it's a 6 to 7 drive turn, and even then, that leaves our hand super stacked at the end of the turn. Yes, our hand is like quote-unquote fake, but our G-Guards kind of remedy that. The other thing is you should never go less than 2 of this, not just for the resist, but people underestimate the fact that not only is this a 7k, that's an extreme battler that gets resist, but in your favorite champ full combo kill terms, this card is a beat stick, and if we don't see Sazanda, we are in desperate need of beat sticks, because we're not guaranteed to see triggers. We're not guaranteed to see Sazanda. This acts as an extra copy of Sazanda and like a half extra copy of Gulsachi. So as many numbers as possible is appreciated. Something else that comes up is that our grade 1s, being 7 and 6Ks, as we'll see in the next card, is really good because we can ride one, call a 7, or something else behind, swing under, and then it can kind of tunnel us into an OTK turn if we're playing against the deck we need to do that against. Riviera is a really good example of this. What else is a good example? Highlander's another one that we sometimes have to do this for, at least to deny damage on turn 2. Same thing with Neo Nectar, depending on how much gas they draw. Steven was on 2 of this and 0 Sanctitude, and I think he's smoking rocks for that. I don't think there's a reason to ever not play Sanctitude. I understand the whole thing with search targets, and the whole thing with him having to play Rollock because he's playing bad ratios, and you kind of have to like play bad ratios to commodify the fact that you're also playing Rollock, which is a card you don't need. I'm just gonna lay out the rest of my grade 1s because this is gonna be a little bit of a thing. I talked to him a bit about this last weekend when we were in Japan, but basically if you see his list, he was not playing this. He was playing 2 Rolocks, he was playing 1 more Gunsdon, and he was playing not 1 of this, but 1 more of this. The reason we're not doing this is because we have actually tested and we actually play Victor as like a living, so there's no reason to not play Sanctitude. Like literally as much of a slight advantage that we can get against our opponent as possible is like welcome, because like if we draw a 1-card PG, this is a deck that goes way further than turn 4 a lot of the time. So like if we can just 1-card PG something that we have to PG, that's a big deal. Also, especially once we get to our grade 0s, you'll notice something funny in this list particularly that we need this for. And then it's an extreme battler, so like worst case scenario we can search it. Also like don't worry, I have the English one. I just saw the Japanese one at a store in the radio tower, and I had to buy it because I lost my English SP, okay? I played the English one for Worlds, don't worry, bro. This card draws a card. This card turns the card face down at our damage defensively, which is a decent thing sometimes because it lets us go into Unior. If we have 1 face up and we need 2 face up but we can't stiff need, we can PG into this, CB, draw a card, and then G-Guard again into Unior, unflip 2 damage, and then we have just enough gas to go into a 2 CB Buster turn or a triple attack Merciless turn if we need to. Another thing is, again, the 6k power kind of matters sometimes. Like if we ride this and swing under a 7, it's like decent sometimes, but like it barely comes up. Being an extreme battler comes up, and I also don't think you should play more than 1 of this, even if you are gonna not play this, because this can only guard victors, and that actually comes up. like more than you think. There are quite a few decks that we have to PG turn 3. We don't want to be committing too much to guarding a Vanguard a lot of the time turn 3, but there will be a lot of times where our opponent will just see like a card that gets a lot of critical, or something that like they just see a bunch of crits, they hit a lot of triggers, they go really wide, maybe they hit a crit a turn early and they're just aggroing us turn 3 and we just can't get over there without a PG, and guess what? None of our cards under grade 3 are victors, and we have this in hand and we die because we can't PG with. This card's just been sitting here, I haven't explained him as much. You'll see like TIE Fighter be a pretty big proponent of this card. You can already guard early, and once we get to the Rollock, it's only really there going second. Going second, right, and they go to grade 2, Neo Nectar is a deck that if we're going to guard a card, all we need is a 15k. Because they're not getting over a 13k attack. They're getting they're getting a column of tokens, maybe they get 15k. But they're never putting it on the Vanguard. If they're putting it on the Vanguard, they're kind of losing out on their rear guards, and that's not always the best thing, because they always want to be threatening a 1-to-pass that you might actually want a 1-card guard, and that's not always the best thing to put a 15k column behind the Vanguard. So ideally their turn 2 or turn 1 is going to be a 10, 8, 10, or a 13, 13, 8. Any combination of those two things. Maybe even a 16, 8, 10, or reverse that order ideally, but pretty much what they're going to be doing in a way that any amount of Rolocks cannot solve. If we need to use a heal guard early and save the Rollock, it does not replace the thing that you're trying to play the Rollock for. So if we're trying to heal guard that turn and Rollock the next turn, and then we survive into their first stride turn, and their first stride turn hits like a truck, we don't have enough defense for that. They're, like, again, our shield, other than these 10Ks and some perfect guards, 5K shield syndrome. We're not living a first stride. They can, like, Neo Nectar is an aggro deck, but they can't really OTK many people. They can OTK us just because our shield sucks. So we can't really afford to play cards that just, like, let us, quote-unquote, survive just one more turn against them. We need to not just step on the gas. So something that not a lot of people realize about this deck is that we want to be saving our heal guards, or heals in general, for turn 3 and later. So if you are familiar with Narukami, where you have heal guards and you play them for heal guards in case you like want to not die, you ideally want to save them because your G guards are higher impact and they kind of get your engine going. That's especially the case with Nova Grappler, because a lot of our resource management comes out of our G guards. And if we're using them early, just so that we can save a Rollock for later and then use the Rollock, and then our first stride turn, our hand is like 3 cards and we're just eating damage like crazy. That is a much worse scenario than if we, let's say that Rollock was one of these, we held it in our hand, we ate a damage, we banked on a defensive, because again, ultimately that's what we're going to have to do in the first place. Realistically, even if we don't hit a defensive and we guard 1 attack and we take 2, we're at 2 damage. Next turn, we go to 3 or 4, right? When they start swinging at us and we keep that heal and we use that G guard now, not only are we drawing 2 more cards that could potentially out us from that turn, but we're actually guarding attacks that are like insanely hard to guard, and also efficiently taking each damage to a margin where if you hit any amount of defensives in any of those first couple of turns, each counterblast and damage that you have to take later, that you don't have to take, is just playing towards your advantage. So other than shit-talking Rollock, why am I playing for this guy? There are a lot of decks that people did not have on their radar. One of them, One Worlds, Fenrir. So there are a lot of decks in the format that people are not accounting for, and they are OTT, Fenrir, Nubatama especially, and even to an extent Neo Nectar, the French variant, or just any Neo Nectar in general, because they're kind of all streamlined to like a mix of the French variant and the normal variant. These are decks that we need to step on the gas as fast as possible for, and our ceiling going crazy on turn 3 just gets us there sometimes. We're winning turn 3 with this card. If not winning, we're pushing their hand down to like 0. This card plus G Victor, just like aggroing as much as possible, is like the thing that people are afraid of Nova Grappler for. So like you'll see a lot of people be like, oh yeah, no, their turn 3 is crazy. But if you realize this deck's turn 3 actually isn't that crazy, or without this it wasn't, because again, like it's just a bunch of like it's a bunch of cards from like 2016 that are like, okay, draw a card, stride GB1, right? None of them are really like that pressuring turn 3, especially like if you see the common list that actually topped Worlds. This card does not clash with anything. It doesn't even clash with Busted, because the games that you're actually spamming this are games that you're not even going into Busted too much anyways, and if you're trying to do this and Bustard in the same turn, you're basically already so set up that you're pretty much already, like, you already have it in the bag. This card, plus, like, even V Victor, is just too good. Also, again, the fact that you can call this one card out and get all of your resources back and resolve all your skills with only calling one card out of your hand means that you can save the rest of your hand. They only have one card to remove, and you get to stockpile everything else for your final, like, full combo turn. That also leads into the other thing. This card, something that people do not realize about this guy, he can stand himself. This is the only card printed in the clan that does not say other rearguard, so you can actually just, like, swing with him, stand himself, give him 5. Sazanda, give him another 5. Bustard, flip if you care about that. Or if not, you're on like V Victor turn 3. You swing with him again, swing V Victor, stand him, get a drive check. Or like you swing with him, right? You swing with like a Gulsachi, stand him. You swing with him again, you swing Victor, stand him, and they don't see the fact that he can stand himself. And you see like crit, right? You go all effects here, and you swing with him, and it's like, oh, whatever. And then you Soul Blast one, stand him on attack, and they're like, oh, wow, like. Sometimes they forget. Ideally, they're not forgetting that. But again, it's the fact that you don't have to commit as much. And also, 10k shield. This card is just too good not to play. This card was a 2 of in my list for the longest time. These cards were any combination of Rollock, Brutal Jack, more Gunstomp. But the more of these like decks that you're just put on a clock against came up, the more of these just came into the deck as like mandatory. And I think you do have to play 4 of this. If you see the list that David won with that he got from me, he was on 4 of this, and I was initially on 3, and he's like, yeah, like, I tried the Honolly and Rollock, and he's like, I wished Honolly was Rollock. And then I'm like, I'll ask you this one. What if Rollock was more of this guy? And then we just went to 4 of this, and the deck just started going crazy. You need to play this. There's no reason to play any other one. This card reads win the game. So I'm on 3 Friel Dragon and 1 Arago Blau Energy. A lot of lists are playing 2, and a lot of lists are playing 4. I actually debated cutting this and going to a 4th Heal Guard, because Heal Guards are really good into Neo Nectar. There are some games where we cannot rely on taking damage, and we have to have Heal Guard and G Guard for the follow-up, and just having this in our hand and then drawing this, like, just doesn't work, because this cannot Heal Guard for us, and just having this as the heal in our hand early kind of like, not bricks us, but it like makes our early defense kind of bad when we might actually need it to be solid. But ultimately, like, a lot of Neo Nectar players, while they do know what to do against us, a lot of the popular Neo Nectar decks are kind of streamlined to damage deny us, which is kind of to our advantage and what we want to do anyway, or what we want them to do anyway. So I was fine with this. This one comes up into like, namely Grand Blue, Nubatama, anything that's like somewhat of a tempo deck that can moderately out-resource us. Link Joker is another one that comes up that's really big. Just something that we can like jump scare, flip up 1 more damage, and all of a sudden we get 2 cycles of favorite champ instead of 1. If this was a BCS, I would not be playing this card. I would be playing 4 of this, because there are a lot more like sacky turn 3 wombo combo decks that we just like, we want to have as much like survivability as possible. But going into worlds where people are like methodically like playing these tempo decks that are like tried and true, and we kind of know what they're doing, and we're all kind of playing on like equal standing. Again, this will just come up as like another just like 1 up to get us that last extra resource to where we can combo our opponent the next turn. Also, Spiral Breaker can search this, but we never want to be searching this with Spiral Breaker unless we're like literally like tunnel visioning into a OTK against like, I don't know, Gurgwit, but that barely comes up. There's 1 Twin Blader, there's 4 Break Pass, there's 2 Magnagas 2502, 3 Kitten Pecan, 1 Red Lightning. If you notice something in my deck, this is all 50 cards. I'm only playing 3 Sentinels. This is on purpose, and it punished me in Swiss because I faced an Overlord, and it's the one deck I need 4 for. But I still stand behind it, because who is expecting to see Overlord at Worlds, right? Even in a format where people are playing their pet decks, who is expecting to see Overlord at Worlds, right? And who is expecting to need the 2 perfect guards and like have the game last that long, right? I do still stand behind 3 Sentinels though. If this was a BCS, this would be a draw PG. Absolutely, 100%. But the extra crit is important, because this deck goes into the grind. And why that matters is that once people start counting our triggers, and we have 1 of these showing, and they see the winning list from Toronto, and they're like, oh, he has 1 or 2 of these remaining, because Nova Grappler has to have draws. And then they no guard at 4, or they expect a turn where you're not seeing crits and you see crits, you just win the game. Alternatively, turn 3, the less crits we see and the more draws and heals we see, our turn kind of gets worse. Not as much as it would hypothetically, because we're still seeing triggers, but these are a lot of these matchups we kind of have to see crits as early as possible. So the fact that counting the over trigger, we have 11 in our deck is just like, we need them. As early as turn 1, seeing a crit as early as possible is a big deal. It's why I still think the blue OT is better than the red in the decks that have the option to play both of them, but again, we have a OT that's just better, so we play that one. Red Lightning, again, same reason we're playing Blau Energy. We do not want to be playing any more than one 5k power, 10k shield trigger in our deck, and this card is, again, just a godsend. This card saves us so many times. I would unironically never cut this card. Even into Link Joker, when you have Sar Blauglons, the one that could potentially unlock, I think this card is better, because if you have one face down damage, you can still use this and unflip it. This card is just way more versatile, and again, yes, oh yeah, no, it unlocks with Sar Blauglons, but we already cook Link Joker. It doesn't matter. Like, that matchup is already one-sided. We win, right? This card is, like, into Granblue, into Mega Colony, this card cooks. I know Deck Flare had a bit of a disagreement when I brought this up, but ultimately I think 6 is the bare minimum. I know Deck Flare played a lot more, and if I'm not mistaken, cut one of these and like 2 of these, played 8, or however many, that's not even 8, cut 2 of this and just played a bunch of soul crits. I agree with that, I think that's good, but we don't always want to be tunnel visioning into a giant bustard turn, because that's not always the best idea, and a lot of decks can capitalize on us decking out, so that, again, might not be the best idea into a format with Bugs just trying to deck us out, or Fenrir just trying to deck us out. So as many crits as possible that also have 15k shield is a big deal. Also, the fact that we're riding a new Victor every turn means that we need to be striding cost efficiently, and this is one of the cards that gets us there. Going into BCS season again, I am 100% cutting one of this or one of this for another draw PG, but as it stands for Worlds, I stand 10 toes behind the 11 crits. You need them. Again, just getting a 1-up RNG over your opponent just by seeing one more crit than them is just a huge deal. Turn 3 onward, 1 crit, as long as you have a restand card, 1 crit is 2 crits. Or 1 crit can be 3 crits, as long as we're restanding. I still have this, I'm going to sell it one of these days. I think it's like averaging, what, like 800? Something like that now. Let me know if you guys want to buy this. Anybody? My starting price is 800. I don't know why. Like, you have to play a Harmonix Messiah. Like, it is a mandatory card, unfortunately. But, like, if you want to bling it out, like, hit me up. 2 Vic 10. I hate this card. I was on 4 V Victor for the longest time, so that I could only play one of this. But as more matchups that I had to aggro came along, I had to play the 1 G Victor again, which unfortunately meant that I had to play a second of this. I hate having to play Persona Flippers in this deck, because it means that we have less good flip targets for Bustard, and what that means is that every time we flip for Bustard, it's one less option we have. So when I was playing 4 V Victor and I was cutting this, I had one more option to flip up, or rather, one more option I would be able to save by flipping up something else. Namely, this would either be a Demelzaurus, another G-Guard, or, again, another Stride, namely like Asdabulk, if the card came up in some scenario. I hate this card. I can write a book on how awful this card is. This card sucks, but you have to play it. This is, like, unironically, like, unfortunately, one of the cards you go into, like, 70% of the games. This card does not do what you think it does. If you're playing this card to get a bunch of drive checks and try to sack your opponent, you're playing it wrong. This card does not do that. This card reads draw 5, and then sometimes you use it to turn into gas, but, like, not all the time. This card is, like, pretty much the only way that we can replace our cards in this deck, because we don't have an advantage engine, and we kind of have to replace that with literally this one guy. I was on 1 of this for the longest time, but I actually went to 2 of this, Merciless Dragon. So, the reason you play 2 of this is for Mega Colony. Link Joker, it comes up sometimes, but you can win without it. Essentially what you do is you do 1, so every time you do this, it plays around Blister, because if we're on Zubat and we give the skill to Vanguard, we swing, stand something, stand him before they get a guard step, and they can't blister us. So if we swing first, and then we stand something, and then stand him, and do it after, that gives us 3 Vanguard attacks instead of 2. That actually matters. There'll be times where we actually want to bait out 2 blisters. So if they have 2 blisters and they have 2 soul, and we swing and we stand him prematurely, that's actually to our advantage, because we don't want to be doing the extra restand, because it'll be minusing us too much. So instead of us discarding 4, we're making them discard 4 by making them discard 4 cards for Blister and soul blasting 2 cards they needed in their soul. So that can also sometimes come up to out-resource bugs. There are times where we just kind of have to gamble and play this card. I don't like this card. Like, there's only one card in this entire G-Zone that I actually like. Every other card in this G-Zone, I don't like. I hate it. Every single G-Unit in this G-Zone is like my worst enemy, except for one guy. One guy is like my ride or die homie since like 2016, and everybody else is like the ops, alright? This is my one homie in the G-Zone, everybody else is like my arch nemesis. This is our one tried and true win con that we've had for like 8 years now. You can win on this card much earlier than you usually think you can because of the certain like power thresholds you can hit and just knowing your matchup. I've been able to like OTK Gear Chronicle players by only standing 3 rear guards off of this card just because I knew how many Sazandas and what restanders I had accessible, and whether or not I knew like what was and wasn't in my deck, and again just like how many cards I was able to draw. The bigger your hand. If you end your main phase with 4 cards in hand, you get 2 cycles of this. If you end your main phase with 1 card in your hand, you can get 1 cycle of this. Ideally you want to start your battle phase with at least 1 card in your hand, which is going to justify using this. If you are out of resources but you flip more cards, because there again will be games where you have to flip a lot of cards but you have to overguard things like Katrina, and you have to like you just have to dump out your entire 17 card hand just to guard it. That's what this is for. This card is not as good as Favorite Champ. Favorite Champ's ceiling is much higher than Dreiger, but Dreiger is here because if we have to overcommit to guard, this card can still win us games. This card also moderately plays around a lot of Mega Colony shenanigans, and also this card just pairs with Sazanda crazy. This card can easily get to the 120s with Sazandas. And then 1 Origorum. I was not on this card for the longest time. This card actually makes our Buster turns worse because it shuts us off of options because you cannot flip this card up. So that means we have to start flipping up G-guards or combo pieces. So you really have to know what you're flipping when you go into, or if you're deciding to run this in your deck. But the reason we're running this is first and foremost Mega Colony, and then second off against Nubatama, if they're trying to either deny us or tempo us out and then just like randomly discard our hand, we can go into this and we no longer have to discard for Stride. So every time we're riding a new grade 3, we can already pay the cost for Stride, so we can just go into these and we kind of just have like a 1 turn, like whatever, like quote-unquote turtle turn, but we weren't doing anything on that turn anyways because they weren't giving us damage. The other thing is if we're facing a deck that we're trying to 0 to 6 and we're trying to do our restand plays and then stand our front row and then go Vanguard, and we're trying to play around defensives, this card also kind of helps us do that. You need 2 Stiff Need. Never play less than 2 of this. This card combos with itself. You can just do it for the shield. There are actually turns where I will overpay Counterblast so I won't draw cards because I don't want to deck myself out. So like on my final combo turn, like they hit a defensive and I would go Sachi to stand something but it wouldn't hit, but I do it anyways just to pay the Counterblast face down so that when I flip 1 face up with Zubat, I have to, or I'm able to only Counterblast 1 card instead of 2. Or rather, if I'm paying as many Counterblasts as possible, when I pay the 1 Counterblast, I'll still have the extra Counterblast face down, and I won't have to take a card out of my deck. So timing this card is a big deal. Also, this card is our biggest defensive ceiling possible, so you kind of have to play this. This is like one of the only ways out of Katrina, and also one of the only ways out of just like generically good like Highlander turns. Also Highlander is like a free matchup for us. If you're remotely afraid of Highlander, even if they sack Laura, you win. Dogen Titan, so a lot of people are on 2, a lot of people are on 3. I was actually on 1 of this for the longest time. The reason I went to 2 is Mega Colony, because we're flipping both of these for Bustard, and we're just threatening an unflip every turn so that they aren't denying us damage. We are never G-guarding more than 1 of this per game. You actually don't even need more than 1 of this against Link Joker, but again, the only reason I'm playing 2 of this is, again, against decks that we just like draw heals early against, and we just flip this up. It just comes up sometimes, and I'd rather have it than not have it. Only 1 Gundreed. If you know me, you know that I'm a fan of like 3 of this card just because you can like triple G-guard, flip everything up, and then just GB8 them, but like that's not realistic. And also, that almost never comes up in the first place because we, like, any time pre-history collection that we would do that triple G-guard play, we can do a much better turn by just going Stiff Need, draw cards, use 1 of this, and then do another Stiff Need, do another one of this, do a Unior, any combination of those things, and it's just better than doing triple because ultimately we're getting a favorite champ instead of a GB8, and our favorite champ ceiling is much better. 1 Unior, this does come up. Don't play any more than 1. I think the 1 is perfect. Don't play any less than 1. A lot of our management and our damage zone manipulation comes out of our G-guards in this deck. So again, just being able to like unflip and flip face down and then draw and filter, like all of our like advantage engine and everything comes out of our G-zone pretty much. It's pretty strange. A lot of people were cutting this in like most decks, but I think you need to play this format. dismal. There was a world where I was cutting a Dogen Titan for a second of this because there were Aquaforce and Granblue players that were going into Balan Arena against me because I had such a big hand, and this card kind of solos them. If they're trying to target our Sazandas or our Golsachis or any amount of like restanders we have on the field, or like our Gunsdens that we had to put in the front row because we needed a drive check that we need to save for next turn, or again a Gambarugon that we need for 2 turns in a row, this card just comes up. You need to play this one. Oh yeah, I mean, like, whatever, if you guys really care. Whatever. I got some of these signed by some of my favorite dudes. Shout out to Different Fight for not being able to draw, I guess. A lot of these combos are very self-explanatory, but here's one that I'm going to show you. All you need is to be on Zubat. You need 1 Stride Fodder, and you need a 2-card combo of Spiral Breaker and Jarahawk. You can get these a lot of ways. You can open them, you can search them by riding Sazanda, whatever. So, as long as we're on Zubat, and we're able to stride with our opponent at grade 3. So we ride the Zubat, we stride into our Bustard, we activate Zubat's stride skill, we pay a counterblast, we draw one. For this example, I'm just not going to show what the cards are, because if it's a combo piece, then it's going to increase our ceiling, and I want to show the minimum. We'll call one, we give the skill to Vanguard, because 90% of the time, we're going to be giving the skill to our Vanguard. I see so many people go up against control decks, give a skill to Rearguard, and they just get hit with, like, Veratrum if they're facing, like, Fenrir or Regalia, and it's just a pain, and you could totally just avoid that. And then we're going to call our Jarahawk. So, this combo, we are going to get only 6 drive checks, and depending on what we see and where our opponent is, it will let us know whether or not we need to restand or not. So we're going to swing boosted with Spiral Breaker. We're going to activate his effect. So our opponent's on grade 3, so we're going to pay Soul Blast 1. We're going to stand our Jarahawk behind him. Because our opponent's on grade 3, we can actually stand himself because it's the entire column. We stood 2 things, Busted Procs, we Soul Blast 2, we flip 2, we get 2 drive checks. We are now currently at 5. We swing again, we boost with the Jarahawk again. End of battle, Jarahawk will proc, we counterblast 1, we push him to Soul, we draw a card. We stand this, we give it 2k, we Soul Blast the Jarahawk out, we flip 1 more card up, we are now at 6 drives. This might not hit, maybe it will, maybe we have an Excel if we went first, we have Sazanda on it, this can get more power if we swing it again, but ultimately we'll swing, just say they're on 11 and they did not see defensives or they guarded early. We swing with our Vanguard, we use the Zubat Stride skill to stand. Now if we have a Stride crit here, we will get another card in addition to the draw we get, and I'll show you that in a second. But for now, we currently have 6 drives. We go first check, second check, third check, fourth check, fifth check, sixth check. Wow, look at that, it's all blanks. This is what I see all the time. Anyways, that does not matter. We just drew ourselves a lot of cards. So, if we were calling these 2 cards out in any other deck, and let's say we draw a card from something gave us a card, and then we go triple drive, we end on 4 cards in our hand. And then let's say we swing with this again, end of turn, Zubat, countercharge, soul charge, draw a card, doesn't matter what the card is, we now end on exactly 9 cards in hand. Let's say we have a single soul crit in our hand. So we do the same thing, we're on Zubat, we have our normal 0, 1, 2, 3 amount of soul, so we pay the cost for Stride, we get our Bustard, we use Zubat's skill, we counterblast 1, we draw a card, it doesn't matter what it is. We do the exact same column, give the skill to Vanguard, of course, because by the time something else will stand, the only thing that will actually give us the soul is our Magnagas or our Break Pass, whichever one we need. We call our Jarahawk, we call our skill crit, and we go in. We go 1, skill, Soul Blast, flip 2, column stands, Soul Blast the rest of our soul out. We swing again, we end of battle, counterblast, shove it in, stand, draw, flip 1, Soul Blast, we're at 6. We swing again, we swing with our Victor, we use the crit first, we put it in, we draw a card. We stand our Rearguard, we use Bustard, Soul Blast it out, flip 1, we are now at 7 drive. When we get to 7 drive, we almost always want to be restanding our Vanguard afterwards, because In the end, we'll only lose one card from it, but we're pushing way more pressure onto our opponent. Pushing in our opponent for another damage, regardless of what triggers we see, is always better than having one more card in our hand, with the exception of if we just desperately need to pass our turn. So, we swing, we get our 7 drive checks. Doesn't matter what they are, they're probably going to be blanks. 4, 5, 6, 7. Look, all blanks. Who cares? Anyways, if we end our turn here, 6, 9, 10, this draws us one more. We end on 11, but assuming we're a good player and we want to discard our 3, this is not a card we're discarding. Maybe we discard the OCD. I'm just going to discard a card I might want to actually discard. We stand, we go to Twin Drive. We swing again, we get 2 more checks, doesn't matter what they are. Amazing. I did not plan this out. Anyways, we swing with this. End of turn, Zubat, countercharge, soul charge, draw a card. And we now end on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards in hand. Plug. So, we're going to do a favorite champ play. Let's one of these, let's discard this for Stride. Here is why 4 cards in hand and 3 counterblast equals 2 cycles of favorite champ. So we're going to Stride our favorite champ. We're going to do all of our rearguard swings. Whatever, right? We swing with our Vanguard. We do first check, second check, third check. It does not matter what these are. All that matters is that our drive checks generate us 4 cards. So we do this, counterblast 2. We're going to discard 4 in total, so let's just discard our 4 right there. That's 5. No, that's 6. So yeah, we can stand everybody. Again, doesn't really matter how many. I mean, it kind of does for power, but whatever. And then we countercharge for this, right? Now we have 3 in hand. We're going to get 1 more with a drive check. So we swing our board out again, right? We do that. We swing with our Vanguard. We do 1 check. We do 2 counterblast. We discard our 4. Whole board stands. And we countercharge. And we're good to go. Another cycle of however many attacks we have. This also does is it lets us do 1 more counterblast play, which is nice because if we have a crit and we get a really big Sazanda and we put it there, we can swing him again. Let's say we only have 1 card in hand now. What this lets us do is it lets us restand our board plus Vanguard once and then our board a second time. So we swing these out just to show you, however big these are. I'm not even going to count them because our numbers get huge. I think you already know that. We do our swing, we get our triple drive. I kind of just shuffled everything, which is why I'm checking the starter. Anyways, we do this. We do our 2 counterblast, we discard these 4 cards. Everybody stands. Counting the Vanguard, we countercharge 1. We swing these guys out again. Nice. We go Vanguard again. We do 1 more check. We counterblast our 2. We discard 1 this time. We only stand the rear guards. We do not have the resources to stand the Vanguard, but that's fine. All we need to do is stand the rear guards. This is usually enough to kill them. This is usually more than enough to kill them. Starting with 4 cards is sometimes overkill, but it's also sometimes just like over the edge enough to beat out like very defensive decks. Against most decks that don't have like super crazy defense or disruption, 1 card at the start of your battle phase is all you need in hand. It all depends on how much damage they're at, how many cards in their hand, what deck they're on. All of this takes time, experience. You'll know based on what clan it is, how much damage you need to put them at before you go into this guy. That's basically a couple of the things that are required to actually knowledgeably go into this guy consistently. Okay, I am back with dice. Let's actually just go into our big combo. I had to re-record this because I did not have enough space to record it first. Let's rest this to give most important things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. This will get big. This column, who cares? This, who cares? If they disrupt us, whatever. We still kill them. Anyways, let's swing 9 at a rear guard. Let's go 17. Let's go 13. Let's swing with 2 14s. Nice. Let's swing with a really big 27. We do our 3 drive checks. We're not counting triggers here. Anyways, let's do our counterblast 2. Let's discard our 4 right here. Let's stand everybody, and let's start using some dice. So, really quick, the reds are intervals of 1k, the yellows are intervals of 10k. Now, we will give this 5, 5, and 5, so this gets plus 15. Let's get a 1 and a 5 right here. We will
go, this gets 10. This will get 10. Both spiral breakers will get 10k. His skill gives him 5, by the way. This will get 10. Our Vanguard will get 10 because we should have restored it and countercharged, but I forgot. Right there. And then these get really big. So let's say 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
This gets 32. This will get 42k power. So let's do a 4 and a 2 right there. And again, each of these saw 3, 6, and 9. Each of these saw 8 things stand. So again, these will each see 40k. Actually, I lied. They give each other 5. There we go. It is 45. I lied. Anyways, now that our board is massive, this is now 18k. This is now 27. This is now going to be 59. This is going to be 59. 16, 26, 66, 68. This is going to be 35, 55, 60. Let's do our 1 check. We do our restands. We do our 4 cards. We CC 1. We stand everything. I have 8 minutes to record this. That's what the clock gave me.
Also, mess with that dice really quick. Everything stands. This becomes slightly easier. This goes to 2. 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 This goes to 5. 9, 5, 45. Another 45. So these go to 90 now. There we go. Remove these. And that's good to go.
So we go 9, 13, 33. Right? 9. 8, 13. Yeah, 33. Cool. This is now, what, 47? 17? 57. Wow, I cannot count. 16, 36, 38, 88. This is going to be 99, 104. This is going to be 104. This is going to be another number. We don't get drive checks this time, but we still get to do the thing. This is also, by the way, if you want to know, 35, 75, 80. Let's do another discard 4.
Countercharge again. Let's stand all the dudes. Counting the Vanguard. These all go to 3.
By the way, this is never actually happening in game. Like, this is exclusively just to see how... Like, this has happened, I would say, like, 3 in a couple thousand games to me. It's never this big, but it's sometimes kind of big. Anyways, another 45, 135. I actually don't have enough dice for this. That's 130. That's 135 right there. This is only 43 right now. We go again for these numbers. Whatever they are, I don't know. Honolly is just going crazy right now. We swing. No drive checks. We discard our last 4. If we have like a Jarahawk or a Golsachi, then we can do one more CB restand. I did not get one of him, so I'm just going to be doing it this way. If we have a Hedgehog also, we can do another cycle if we have one more card in hand. I'm just going to count it right there. I'm too lazy to actually count the other numbers anyways. We're going to swing one of these because ultimately, like, the best thing to stand is one of these because they're the biggest. If we see a crit, we're going to put it here. This is plus another 35. We're going to swing with this. We're going to Soul Blast 1. If I get the dice to stay. This also gets another 5. We swing with it again. We swing with this one. We're actually going to stand the Sazanda because it's just objectively the biggest thing. It gets another 5. We swing with it again. We swing with this. Let's try to Soul Blast one more time. Stand this. Swing with this. And then, if they're not dead, swing with these guys again. Nice. Wow, I did not count how many attacks. I can't believe I got this many attacks in one whole turn, guys. Wow. That's so many attacks. Amazing. Look how many attacks it is. I totally know how many that is. I counted. Now here's where your path splits, in that you have a plethora of options for content on my channel to look through for Nova Grappler. If you're looking for any types of different options or alternative cards or builds or other routes you can take the deck, here is or where will be a entire video of every single card I considered when I decided to take Victor to Worlds. Right here, there's going to be some gameplay as well as maybe a couple streams. We'll have to see if I end up making the playlist again of all of my gameplay footage, but that will be right here. I hope you guys got something out of this, whether it's just like entertainment or some insight or you're trying to pick up the deck. I hope this was worth your time. This has been my 2023 Worlds run. See you later.